All right. That was like a long delay, and this always happens with StreamYard. But welcome to Artcasters. This is a show where we talk about the ins and outs of illustration, design, cartooning. We talk a ton about comics, and I think that this is going to be a pretty interesting show because it's going to get into some old school, pretty awesome little snippets of history of comics. So we have a really special guest today. Brought to us old coworker of Gary Hodges, who just by coincidence happened to work for Wizard Magazine, which for anybody who was familiar with reading comics, particularly in the 90s or the early 2000s, most people are pretty familiar with Wizard Magazine. It was like the price guide for comics, all that fun stuff. But before I get into introducing our guests, I'm going to go ahead and introduce everybody here, or have everybody here introduce themselves. First, you're on my channel, so if you haven't yet, hit subscribe, hit the bell, make sure you're following this channel and the bell so you get notifications when we're about to go live. And I have this thing over here, which is my graphic novel about faith and mental illness that I handwrite, hand letter, hand ink, and the first volume is up on Amazon. For like, they have it discounted for something like $5, and I still get the same royalties. So go get this book. It's a good graphic novel. All right, that's it for me. Scott, where can everybody find your work?
You can find my work at circworks.com or my YouTube channel, Circworks on YouTube. And as far as what I got to promote, if you happen to be in Arizona, this Saturday, I will be doing a signing at Surprise Comics in Surprise, Arizona for the cover I did for Ice Cream Man number 25 for Image Comics. And I've been doing these little remarks. I don't know, you can see this little Monopoly guy I drew on this thing. And then I've got you see what's his name? The Operation guy. I've got Hungry Hippo. I've just been doing a bunch of different game characters, little sketches on these, so I'll have those there. And then I've been doing it with my own comic too, Young and the Dead. So I'll have a lot of these little remarks, which are basically just drawings on the actual covers.
Awesome.
So got a bunch of those. I'll be there signing. I'll be there doing sketches and more remarks and all that stuff. So if you happen to be in Arizona, come out and see that. If you aren't in Arizona and you want one of these books, they're exclusive to Surprise Comics, so you can get them at their website at surprisecomics.com, and you can just get the regular variant cover that I did, or you can get them with the remarks on them. They've got a few different options over there. So
awesome. Yep. I love it. All right, cool. So if you guys are in Arizona, go check that out. We are also joined by our very much recovering and might disappear from this stream at any point in time.
I popped some Oxy right before we went live just to be here.
So did I, coincidentally.
Hey, there you go.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm either going to get really chatty or pass out in about 30 minutes. I'm not sure which one.
But we're pleased to see you, Corey. It's good to see you. It's good to see you breathing and talking, so people aren't, under the impression that you've completely passed away or something.
If I really wanted to freak people out, I'd have the oxygen tube in and all that. I got to drag that around today at work. It was fun.
That's pretty awesome, actually. Pure oxygen and OxyContin. You've taken a turn here, Corey.
Yep, and it's helping me move at the speeds of a 97-year-old woman, so I'm good to go. Whew. Slowly, but yeah.
Oh man, where can everybody check out your animations? And
you can just go to CoreyKerr.com. So that name right there at the bottom.com, and then you can click on. I think it's work or something. I don't know. There's animations in there somewhere. You can watch that. Or if you click on what's new, you can see the now award-winning music video that I did. So I released that, I don't know, a week or two ago. I feel like 2 weeks ago, right before I dumped my bike. And then in my days, I'll wake up and I keep getting notifications that it's getting festival and stuff. So go watch that. I think it's 1.5 of them now, so that's cool.
I love it. I think in the process of your accident, you won like 5 awards just during the accident itself.
Right.
But seriously, like Corey, it's kind of crazy. Is it still like 100% batting average on it? So or
no,
no,
it was for a little while. I've been rejected now. I think it's about a 70% now.
That's still pretty incredible. Like
it's early. It'll go down. That'll switch. Put your heart into it. It's like a 20% acceptance rate now that everything is done. But it was like a 60 for a while. So I think at the beginning you just get in a lot of them.
Yeah, but I don't think for most people it starts for about like 5 at like just straight 100% acceptance rate.
So something has to go well in my life. And I guess it's that right now.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. It's just to balance out. But we're glad to see you. We're glad to see you healthy or recovering. And again, if you guys notice Corey disappear, that's just because Corey is recovering still.
I'll just need I might need a nap.
Needs a break.
Yeah,
exactly.
Frank says Corey's back from fighting a dragon. My 3-year-old has full on convinced himself that I was injured fighting a dragon. And every time he sees me in pain, he's like, Dad, you fight the dragon? Fighting that dragon, dude. Yeah, so that's
sounds like Dad's gonna be riding the dragon for a bit on some oxy.
I was ready to jump in there with a riding the snake thing. Yeah, right.
What's that, son?
I wish I had that kind of reaction, but it doesn't do anything but take the edge off. So.
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, so now the creator of DVSM, Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots, our friend Gary Hodges. Gary, where can everybody find your work and all that fun stuff?
So I'm still currently sold out. I'm waiting for an order of the limited pulp edition of D vs. M 1997. In the meantime, if you'd like to support me, if you're curious about my work, I would say subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's just Gary Hodges, and you'll know it's me because the icon is a dinosaur eating an alien. And then you can follow me on Instagram. It's Dinosaurs versus Marsbots, Dinosaurs vs. Marsbots. If you follow me those 2 places, it really helps me out. So that's what I would recommend and beg you do right now.
Awesome. And we also have a link to Gary's YouTube channel, and you guys need to subscribe to Gary's channel.
New videos coming. New videos coming soon. So
yes. Also, that pulp cover looks pretty awesome, so I can't wait to see those editions come in.
The proof should show up any day, and I'm real excited to see it. And once I do it, I'll show it off on my Instagram, on my YouTube, everywhere.
All right. Okay, so now we're going to introduce our special guest. I got into reading comics like right around like maybe a year before the giant Image boom that happened right before the bust. And of course was like super into all the Image guys and stuff like that. And there was this quintessential polybagged magazine that you would pick up. I'm just explaining for people who are younger than us. You would pick it up at, like Walmart, Toys R Us, like at Walden Books, which was a bookstore at the time, Read More Books, which was a bookstore at the time. But you would be able to find this price guide in places where comics didn't even get. And it was a pricing guide for comics that quickly became more of just an entertainment magazine about the comic book industry with fairly questionable accuracy on the pricing at the back. And the guide got shorter and smaller, and there were whole sections of it. But it's a really fundamental, quintessential piece of like journalism in the comic community at a time where there was no real internet. There wasn't really a lot of news sources for comics. And so you basically had this magazine. And our guest is Chris Ward, who is a freelance writer and was on staff writer for Wizard magazine for quite a few years, and so Gary kind of mentioned it, and I was like, I want to hear crazy Wizard magazine gossip, and I reached out to Chris
I want to hear
Ward.
23-year-old gossip.
I want to hear it because I
want it on demand.
Yeah,
I just
hot
think it's
gossip
hilarious.
is timeless. There's no expiration date for hot gossip.
But it is kind of a crazy scenario because there really aren't a lot of scenarios in the world where there's entire publication. Like nowadays, there really aren't even that kind of writing scenario anymore in almost any situation.
No.
But for one to be built around comics and kind of geek culture at a time before comics and geek culture were everywhere, that must have just been a really unique, interesting experience. And also I get interested in it because Wizard, strangely, even though it was kind of a more mainstream publication, what it was covering was had these little tidbits that led me down an indie path that got me out of mainstream comics and into indie comics. Turned me on to people
like Palmer's Picks, probably. I'm guessing.
Yeah, Palmer's Picks, and I remember they had a special on Jeff Smith, and this was back when he was self-publishing Bone, and that's how I found out about Bone, and I was at the right age for that. So, anyhow, point being, I am intrigued by what it was like to work for Wizard. So Chris, why don't we start with I guess maybe first just let people know who you are,
Sure.
a little bit about what you do, and then how you had kind of wound up at that point in your life working for Wizard.
Sure. Yeah. I'm Chris Ward. I'm a writer. I'm now a creative director at an agency. So I do marketing and stuff, but I was freelancing for quite a while. I grew up reading Wizard and I grew up reading comic books. I was really into it in high school. I was really into Toy Fair magazine, actually more, I think. I went to college to be a journalist and broadcaster. Neither of those seemed interesting at the time. Or after I got my degree, I was like, I don't know if I really want to do this. But I really liked writing. And I remembered I liked reading Wizard. And I sent them a thing to be an intern. And this was back when you had to make a physical packet, mail it out, wait by your Nokia phone for a call that never came, just on a, printing your clips out on a printer, just like cha-chunk. It was a grueling process and I didn't hear anything back. And then I got an internship at the Peoria Journal-Star, which was like a newspaper in the area for the agriculture beat, which sounds very exciting. And at the same time, Wizard reached out.
Forget the Wizard stuff. Let's just do hot agriculture goss.
That corn has to be as high as an elephant's hide by the 4th of July. That's the first thing you got to know on the agriculture beat.
I love
you know what?
I love that there's a beat. There's news for this thing that's been around for 5,000 years. There's journalism.
Do you know what bovine? Do you know what bovine refers to?
Yeah,
cows, I think, right?
I got an argument with my coworkers last week. I said I was on a shoot for a client that was an agriculture shoot. Don't worry about it. And I was like, these kids. I'm like, get some more of these bovine shots, and they're like, what the fuck is bovine? And I'm like, it's cows, man. Like, you know that, right?
That's a pretty common word.
Because I'm from the sticks, and I'm like, I didn't know. Get a bovine up in that creek. And I can get pretty backwoods pretty quick. So, okay. I'm not crazy. Okay.
I love it, though. So you're kind of stuck working, doing the agriculture beat, and then
in Illinois, in
got it.
Rural Illinois.
Okay.
Not Chicago. Rural Illinois. And they said, hey, do you want this internship? And I lost my mind. I was so excited because it was like winning Star Search or something. Star Search was a show.
Yeah, Mitch, you gotta explain what Star Search is now.
Now we need to explain Star Search.
Yes.
So kids, Star Search.
So they reached out, and I had to argue with my parents about going to New York because this was post 9/11, and they said there are dirty bombs out there, and they don't want me to go. And I'm like, I can't put my life on hold, Mom and Dad. Like, it was like one of these like moments like in Varsity Blues,
Yeah.
This is not your life. And my mom and I got in a car and we went to New York, and I had $1,000 and I found a room to rent in the Penny Saver, which was a newspaper. And I lived with an ex-con.
Man, this is like the greatest hits of yesteryear.
All the
I
deep
used
cut.
to deliver Penny Saver.
Star Search. Yeah.
It was anyway. So I took the job, but I didn't realize that they were really just taking anybody.
Did you say you lived with an ex-con? Sorry, you just
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Okay, what was he in for?
He had been. It was a cocaine charge.
Okay,
I didn't
dealing or
ask.
possession?
I didn't ask. It was a DUI. He was a door-to-door meat salesman, and he took the company truck out and hit a tree.
Uh-huh.
And I used to drive him to his meetings and stuff. And it was a great guy. This guy Tom. He'd slide pornos under my door and go, "Hey, watch this." I'm like 23, and I'm like,
I need to clarify. Door-to-door meat salesman?
You don't have those?
Yeah,
No.
I thought it was.
But
in New York.
that was my sub point. Was like, this sounds like a Corey Chris story. Like, it was like he was.
I think it was
Like
a
the
Trump
Swans,
steak.
like the Swans guys, right?
Yeah, I was gonna
Swans,
say like
yes.
Swans.
They
Yeah.
have Schwans or Swans.
Yeah.
Right.
Where you guys
have
are?
those in Arizona, Gary.
With the push-up pops.
They don't have it where I am because I live in the middle of nowhere, but I've seen them before.
Schwann's was a truck that went door to door with frozen meat.
So far we've hit the Penny Saver, Wizard, agricultural
This
journalism.
is all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is great.
So okay, so
But
you get
anyway,
so you get this. So you get a roommate, the ex-con roommate. So that's because
Yes.
even at that time, it's like New York is not a cheap place to live, and
no, and this isn't even in New York City. This is in Rockland County, which is not close to New York City. And it's $700 a month for this room. I have an air mattress. There's no Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi doesn't exist yet. I have a laptop that connects to nothing. I have a GameCube. I have my landlord's kid is there on weekends, and he erased all my Super Smash Brothers data. And he said, "Now you have to start over." And I felt the rage. That's all I had at the time.
All you had was the rage.
Yeah, you erase all the data. There's only rage left.
Rage has entered the match.
so
It was weird, but I'm glad I did it in my 20s because that's what you did. There was an intern who lived in a car.
yeah.
There was an intern. It was whatever you could do to get there, and it was unpaid. I got like a food stipend, so I worked at Outback Steakhouse. I was a pool of like 15 interns, and I didn't realize it was just get them here. And I survived. Me and this guy Brian Warmoth were the two that toughed it out and got to write about Spider-Man. That's all. That's it.
I just want to ask if anybody got bingo on their early 2000s bingo cards that you brought to the show today. That's what I'm hoping.
Oh, is there an early 2000s bingo card?
I don't know, but there really should have been for this episode.
We need to make this after the
that would
fact.
have been
I would
good.
love that.
Yes.
the first 20 minutes of this are like one of those VH1 specials. This is amazing.
I absolutely love
purple
it.
iMac.
Okay, so just out of curiosity, so you get there as a guy who, you're fresh out of college. You've written for like an agriculture beat. And
I didn't
suddenly
take it because they called me to offer me the job, and I said, "Sir, my car is loaded. My mom is in the passenger seat."
So this saved you,
and I have to follow my dream. And
I love it. So you
went to work for Garib Seamus.
What is what is the office like when you enter, like, because I mean, if you can kind of take it back to a perspective of having never been in like an editorial room or a creative like department.
I was literally shaking. I was probably white. I think I'd gotten sick the night before. I mean, it was nerve-wracking. I have a suit where the coat is going down to my knees. I look like David Byrne in the big suit. You walk into Wizard. It's in a cul-de-sac in the middle of nowhere. It's fairly unremarkable. But you walk in and there's pinball machines and Alex Ross posters and every Bowen statue known to man. You see things you saw in the magazine. You see people walk by who you're like, I know that guy from the magazine. And it's just insane. It feels like you won a Nickelodeon contest. That's how I felt, but also sick because I was like, I don't know if I can do this. But they were like, can you stay here? Did you find a place? You're in? Okay. Like, it was like, I thought it would be more of an interview, but they're like, you're here. And
oh, wow. Okay. So it's like that.
You passed the test.
Yeah.
So that was it.
They needed boots on the ground.
They needed asses in seats. Yes.
Yeah. That's amazing.
But it was great. But I had a lot of respect for the Joe Iannarello, the guy who hired me, because he was like a newspaper guy, and I knew that. And so I felt like we had some whatever, but he was mostly like, probably like this 20-year-old is annoying me, it was a really weird thing. I think about how angry some of those guys seemed. And then I think about being 40 now, and I'm like, of course they were angry. They were 40, and all these 20-year-olds are running around. Like, you ever work with an overeager 20-year-old?
Every day, actually.
The worst. And we're like fanboys, and we don't yet understand that this is a magazine. So the first story I write is about Spider-Man, and they have all the interns start writing the sidebars in the price guide. That's like the first thing they do. It's like a test. They put you on those sidebars. You don't even get a byline. You get your little initials, and that's thrilling enough. And I start writing about Todd McFarlane and Spider-Man, and the editor comes back and is like, X-nay on Todd McFarlane. Wait, we cannot talk about Todd McFarlane in Wizard Magazine. There's a pending lawsuit. And I'm like, how can you talk about Spider-Man without talking about Todd McFarlane? Like, I'm just like disillusioned, It's like journalism, right? It's not how that works. So
wow.
There were things like we don't write about Todd McFarlane because they had a lawsuit with the guy at the time. Frank Miller had publicly bashed Wizards, so he was persona non grata. One day I would find myself persona non grata, and it's an exciting thing coming out on the other end.
That's fascinating though. So they, I mean, it's not unique to Wizard. Like, there are kind of blacklists that one can be on.
Yeah. But they wielded
it
in a way that was like, they were like the only game in town. So it was play ball with us or kick rocks. And they wielded that kind of attitude until things started to shift and they started to lose that political power in that way. And then, nobody put up with 20-year-olds calling them and asking for quotes about the Hulk when they're on deadline.
That makes sense though, because this is years ago, but it's like, I do remember like when I started kind of getting more into indies, right? Of course I picked up like Comics Journal. And I remember at the time I started picking up like the first few Comics Journals I picked up, there was an ongoing beef with like the Comics Journal and Wizard, where it was like Gary Groth was just like, boom, like punching Wizard all the time. And then Gareb Shamus was like just trying to pretend the Comics Journal didn't exist. Like,
yeah, I know.
It's crazy. But it is interesting. Man. But I still think what Wizard did was pretty incredible. And there were some really good writers there. And also like again, like they covered a lot of mainstream stuff, but like there was always an awareness. I don't know, maybe you could kind of speak to that a little bit, like the culture, but it seems like a lot of people there sincerely loved comics to the point where, quite often it felt like they were almost like sneaking indies in there. at any possible
we were
chance?
absolutely doing that. I mean, so I wanted to be an artist when I was a kid. I wanted to be a cartoonist. I learned about Bone in Wizard magazine, and I started painting Bone on my wall, which angered my mother, but then she was like, whatever. But I was really into cartooning. But I was in a small town, and when you live in a small town, everybody says you're the best. Like, you're the best. You're the best. This is great. That's awesome. And then you get out of your town and you realize, like, you're small town good. You're not really, I wasn't that great. So, and I had an art teacher who was horrible. Like, kind of soured me on art forever. But I loved indie books too. But I didn't have. Wizard was the only way I could read about this stuff because our nearest comic shop was 45 minutes away, and that might as well have been, another country to me. I couldn't drive. I had no way of getting there. There was no mail order really to speak of, like, that I could get access to. So yeah, and the guys, particularly the guys that I worked with, were really hot on the indie stuff. It was my coworker Ricky Purton who brought us the comic. Boys Club, whatever had Pepe in it originally, and it was a little paper zine, and he's like, "This is hilarious. Have you guys seen this?" And we thought it was hilarious, and we would say, "Feels good, man," and like it was our little in joke. And then we put it in the magazine, and just as a favor to Ricky, because Ricky loved this comic and he was such a good guy. And then, of course, years and years later, 4chan got a hold of it, and it became Pepe. That was our little book, and I felt so horrible when that happened. I felt so bad for Matt Fury, and I think most people have seen that documentary now and all that. But we would try to work things in like that. But Wolverine is what sells the magazines, and it's a constant battle between what we call the upstairs, which was like advertising and the marketing and the sales guys. And then editorial, so there was that push and pull. And I think most magazines have that. But we tried to push that as much as we could. And really, we started to shift away from the like boob humor stuff. Because Wizard's known it's kind of a lad rag.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's mostly guys.
What was it, like Brutes and Babes or something? I can't remember. But there was like a section. Yeah.
Yeah. There's stuff I'm embarrassed of in there, but because we were in our 20s. But the first big feature they handed me was like 12 pages long, and it was the 50 hottest comic book movie babes. That was what they gave me. And I was like, even then, I was like, this feels weird. And I was like pretty self-deprecating throughout. That's sort of how I got through it, as just being self-deprecating. But it was stuff like that for a long time. And I think to my coworkers' credits, and these are the guys who went on to be like Ryan Panagos, who works for Marvel, and Alex Segura, who's one of the heads of Archie, and now is at somewhere else that I can't remember. Like, these guys went on to do really great things, and I think they were always pretty good dudes. So yeah, but some of that stuff just doesn't age at all. It's pretty bad. I'm glad it's not easily. I mean, it's just some of it's not great.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like I didn't start getting like published work till like my very late 20s, and I'm kind of thankful for it because honestly, just even without an editor, if I had stuff published from when I was like, a late teen, early 20s, like I wouldn't want to see that.
I mean, I think about it now, and I'm 23 at the time, and they're just letting me do whatever. They're letting me do the letter column, which there's no magazine now with a letter column. It's 5 pages, and they just let me run wild.
How did you get that section? Because that can't have just been handed to you, right? Like, you must have.
It was handed to me because.
But had you done really well on specific sections before?
After I was an intern and I sort of proved myself as a writer, they moved me to the research office, which was responsible for finding all the art for the magazine, which meant running upstairs to an actual comic library that was not organized that well and physically finding issues. So if they're doing a feature on the 50 greatest Spider-Man lizard moments, we have to find those, have them scan them in, and then the designers cut them out. I mean, we can't just Google this stuff. And Shutterstock's prohibitively expensive. not that it stopped us from using Wizard's credit card. Like, I went to Toys R Us to buy toys for a visual price guide. That was the greatest moment. Just like Toys R Us shopping spree. It's like, we need the variant Elf or whatever. What is it? Bilbo. I don't know. I can't remember. But that was a lot of fun. But yeah, the research office, we did all that. I think that's where I got mesothelioma from all that dust and asbestos.
Yeah,
so
dude,
there was
horrible.
there was just a room full of log boxes.
Dust, yeah, long boxes. I mean, like I said, they weren't great because there was interns too, so they didn't put stuff back in the right spots, and there's no ventilation up there, so you're just breathing all that dust all the time. I mean, if you collect records and you look for records in a store, it's a horrible experience. This is before face mask. I mean, a simple face mask would have saved me a lot of time.
No, that makes sense.
But I mean, wait, I'm still curious. Did people just know? Were they like because I mean, you guys
that was sort of job security.
You guys were the index, right? Because it's not like I could look up somewhere. Like, what issue was it where Doc Ock did the thing with the girl or whatever? Was there just like a guy there that's like, 47, and then you'd have to go find it?
Well, a lot of these guys knew this stuff, yeah. But yeah, that was job security for Dan Riley, my boss. He knew he could be like, this issue. Hey, I think it's behind the fire extinguisher upstairs, or I think I saw that in the bathroom 3 weeks ago. It's just like, it was insane. And
this is the greatest interview I've ever had.
Once I was, to give you an idea of where this place was, I was sitting at my desk once, and I look at the corner of my eye, and something goes running behind my desk, a raccoon, into the supply closet, and I just shut the door on it, and I'm like, guys, a raccoon and everyone's like, what? And then we open the door, and there's nothing in the closet. And I'm like, something ran in there. And sure enough, like, this thing came from the warehouse and got in the back of the closet, and they had to call animal control. And of course that ends up in the magazine as like a little comic strip. And, it's like very surreal. But yeah, that's what the research office did. And then while you're in research, you're still writing articles, freelance. So you have a salary, which was $23,000 in New York. And you have to live with an ex-con. That's the deal.
Well, that's the sweeter deal. You either do the ex-con or just your car, right? I mean, at that
point.
Or
the car, yeah. And I trusted Tom. Tom said he jumped in my car once after a meeting, banging a newspaper against his hand. He goes, I got a hot tip. And anytime that happens, it's not pleasant. And he made me drive him to Yonkers racetrack. And sure enough, we won on the trifecta, and I won $300. And then he kept betting, and you know how this ends.
Yeah. Oh man.
But it was. I'm glad I did it in my 20s. But yeah. So research, you'd be a research assistant, and you would be writing articles freelance to make ends meet. And then at some point, a staff writer position opened up, and I was doing that. Rich Ho was one of the other staff writers. I don't know if Ben Morse was at that time. Todd Casey and Mike Cotton was the head of the whole writers bullpen. And Rich Ho was the Magic Words guy. Magic Words was the letter to the editor column at the beginning that Jim McLaughlin wrote, and I think Doug Goldstein before him. So I was like, I'd always secretly wanted to write that anyway. I thought it would be really fun. But Rich was doing a great job, and it was what it was. And then one day somebody wrote a letter to Wizard, and their name was Glenn Campbell. And Rich answered the letter and sent it off to the editor, and Pat McCallum came storming in the office, and he's like, Rich, Glenn Campbell? And Rich is like, I don't know. And he's like, Ward, what would you say if somebody wrote a letter and signed their name Glenn Campbell? And I'm like, I guess I'd call him a rhinestone cowboy or something, He's like, exactly. That's the joke. You missed the joke. And Rich is like, I'm Chinese American. I don't know the history of country music. And I'm like, yeah, like this is an old joke for me. I'm from Illinois. We know who Glenn Campbell is. And so anyway, for whatever, so Pat was like, Ward, you're on Magic Words. And it was like that. That's what it was.
That's amazing.
And I was like, Rich, I'm sorry. This is weird, right? And he's like, it's cool. I don't want it. And like, because Rich was like a serious writer. Like Rich had a spec script for Fables, Bill Willingham's Fables, that he wrote in like 2004 or 5 or something. It was amazing. And I've still got it in my basement. It's in a long box. And, it's just like one of those things. But he wrote a script. And I was like, I've never met anybody who's written a script. I'm a hayseed from Illinois. I was meeting all these people like Justin Acklin and Zach Oat, the Toy Fair guys, because I really wanted to work at Toy Fair. And I had never been in a city before or anything like it. And I went to his daughter's bar mitzvah, and they were having like food, and then they had dessert, and they had Chris try some baklava. And I'm eating this baklava, and I'm like, oh, this is delicious. What is this, like a traditional Jewish dessert? And they're like, it's baklava. And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but it's delicious, So it was like a real, like, I'm like, sushi. Like I was, pretty green. So I was like Nomi in Showgirls.
Just like that.
I kind of relate to that because like I grew up outside of a major city, like on the very far outside, and so like when I first moved to a city, there was a lot of like kind of stuff like that where it's like common knowledge for anybody who lives in like a major metropolitan area, and I would just be like, this is exotic. Like
they're like, Ward, go down to the store. They needed a apple pie for a photo shoot in the photo pit, and they had the guy in the bunny suit all ready to go, and they're like, oh, we forgot the apple pie or whatever the fuck. And Ward, go down to the bodega and get an Entelman's pie. And I'm like, I don't know what a bodega is, and I don't know what an Entelman's pie. And I'm like, and they need this and that, and they're like, what the fuck? They don't even know where to start with me. What is a bodega? What is an Entelman's pie? I'm like, I gotta wait on a line? Can I wait in the line? So I was not. I had to fit in. It took a while.
I like how the funny part of that story wasn't that there was the guy already in the rabbit suit.
Yeah, that's true.
That was not the punchline.
That was just the aside.
Yeah,
that was just to get to the punchline.
That was another rite of passage. The interns they made get in that rabbit suit. That rabbit was the mascot, and it smelled so bad, and all those costumes smelled so bad. Oh, like I don't even know. They're gone now. We tried to find them. They're just gone. They've been assumed into heaven. So
wow.
But yeah.
It's funny, like Scott and I had one of the editors of Mad Magazine on here, and it actually sounds like what you're describing sounds really similar to his kind of description of the bullpen and like the kind of wacky environment they were in.
I'll bet it was. I saw the Mad Magazine office, and it's very similar. It was a floor in the old building that DC was in. It was like a floor below or a floor above. Yeah, and that I wanted to work there so bad. Oh my God, that would have been incredible.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm glad I did. Yeah, because like Wizard, it's like once you're in there, it's like I've looked at other jobs at like Nickelodeon, and like that'd be amazing, right? And I'm sure it's like most jobs, you get in there and it's like, oh, you see how the sausage is made, and it kind of ruins the magic. So
yeah,
the magic of Wizard.
Well, that never really sunk into me until because I had a buddy who like all he wanted to do his whole life was like Imagineering, and then he became an Imagineer. And I went to Disneyland with them, and the way they were talking about all the stuff they did sounded like me talking off air about the places I've worked.
Yeah.
They'd be like, this, I'm like, that's really cool. And they're like, yeah, but I mean, really, it would have been cooler before corporate killed it. And you're like, oh, really? Like, I don't see that. It looks really cool. And they're like, yeah, I just can't even look at that sign. I can't look at that sign, you know. Anyhow,
but that said, it was like looking back, it was the Wild West. It was completely the Wild West, which was fun. But also, you know, a lot of white men, you know, so fun for them. Like
you got a promotion because you knew a country song joke.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that says it right there.
Crazy.
But
so, heavy deadline environment, I'd imagine, right? Like, because, you know, doing it was monthly, correct? Like, or was it
was monthly. But we were working on the magazine 2 or 3 months out. So, you know, we were working on the Christmas issue in like October or September or something. You know, it's just like the cycle was such that you had to do that. And so because of that, we had to constantly be in contact. I was on the DC Comics beat. And I was a Marvel guy, so it was kind of a drag because I didn't know anything about DC Comics really. And, you know, they had to keep us informed with what was going on, and they would broker deals like, hey, we'll let you write about Batman Begins, but you got to eat some shit and write this Catwoman movie story. And that's just, I mean, normal PR stuff, I think. But at the time we were like, what? Like, I don't want to go to the Catwoman set. Or I had to interview, like, you know, the guy who played, you know, Elektra's boyfriend in Elektra, you know, or so, you know, it's like they would work in their not so great stuff in exchange for like the meaty, juicy stories. And then they would be exclusive to us. They wouldn't really play ball with the internet until that became more of a thing. And then it was like too late. So
how would that go down? Like, the way you're describing that is very high level. Like, is there somebody on the phone, or does somebody like show up in like a trench coat? Like, they're bartering these things. And I come at it from like the advertising world, but I'm super curious on how like comics did it.
Yeah. Well, for Dark Horse, it was 3 little boys in a trench coat, and we didn't catch on for a very long time.
Because he had glasses on. Yeah.
Yeah. One savage dragon, please. What? So no, I had a guy at DC that I would call, and he'd run down what was going on that week. Then we'd come back to a news meeting. I'd have my notes. I'd say, here's what I heard this week. And they'd say, that sounds great. That sounds awesome. That sucks. That's great. That sucks. And then they would assemble some sort of editorial, whatever. Then we would have more evergreen features that we did. They started putting me on the humor stuff, thank God, because that's what I like doing the most. And it would be like, you know, Batman's weirdest, you know, there's that panel in the old Batman comic where he's like, Papa Spank, and he's like hitting that woman on the butt. And it would be like digging up those old weird panels and like that kind of stuff before Twitter was in existence. Putting funny word balloons on things, that kind of stuff.
Do you think you might have like kind of pre-set up some of those memes before, like by finding them in Wizard first? Because
I mean, that's what Wizard did. I mean, it was these fumetti action figures with word balloons. You know, that's what. I mean, I don't know if you know the direct connection, but Matt Seinreich, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Sorry, Matt. Seinreich. He was friends with Seth Green through the magazine, and then they all over the years were buddy, and then they basically Twisted Toy Fair Theater became Robot Chicken, and then that's how that came about. But yeah, I guess like there wasn't really. I mean, there were message boards and stuff, but there really wasn't even internet. There wasn't YouTube.
Yeah.
The story. Okay, here's the thing. These stories happened, and I recognize that it sounds insane because I forget that it is insane. It is insane to leave and work at a comic book magazine, and your dad's like, "What is that? Is it?" And you're like, "You can't explain it." And a raccoon runs behind your desk, and like, you know, you're in a rabbit costume, and you're talking to, you know, Jennifer Garner on the phone about a movie you don't care about. And now I live in St. Louis, and it's a little more chill. And I'll be on, like, I was at this thing. It was a Krampus pub crawl, and everyone dresses like Krampus. And so I have a connection to Krampus, which is, I thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. It was in like 2003, and I came across this article, and I was like, guys, you got to see this. And it was like, he's hitting kids he's whipping boys with reeds.
Yeah.
And it's the funniest thing I've ever seen. And there's nothing about this. And later, Rob Bricken, who did Anime Insider magazine, he's one of the editors there, did a website called Topless Robot. And I wrote an article about Krampus. My friend Todd Casey loved Krampus, and we would always make jokes about it. And then Todd went on to write the movie Krampus, he co-wrote the movie Krampus, and sent me he sent me a Krampus sweater and a Christmas ornament. It was like, thanks for the inspiration. And that was my big claim, was like that our little in-joke became this movie. And I'm at the Krampus pub crawl telling this story, and I realized after looking around, I'm like, everyone thinks I'm completely full of shit. Because I would think that as well. And I'm just like in this story, and I look up, and everyone's like, yeah.
Most people don't believe most of my stories either. But.
And then, so I have to dial it back, because I can't just be like, yeah, I was hanging out with Seth Green, and we were talking about Roadhouse for an hour. Like, it's not a good look in St. Louis, and it's not a good look most places, honestly. But I'm like, these things happen to me. I sound like a crazy person.
I think it's fascinating, and I will say, like, I think the weird thing about working in creative is you've been at, like, I don't know, at least for me, it's like I've been at it for so long that there's just weird stuff that's happened, and some weird connections that other people might find really strange or unbelievable, but it always just kind of feels like, well, it's just doing work. A lot of the time. And then it and some of it's like, oh, well, I knew that guy in college, or like, that just happens more and more. I think the more you're kind of active and creative, but it is funny. Because by no means would any of my stories match these, because this is amazing.
Oh, I'm not trying.
Oh, no, I don't think we're doing. But
you absolutely should try to one up us, because these are incredible.
Yeah, they're incredible.
Oh,
stories.
yeah.
But
I'm gonna start making stuff up just to get better stories out of it.
They are great stories.
This one time I was with the Beastmaster at Comic-Con.
But what's fascinating is, like, I guess my point is, it's just interesting how I think people believe it if they're in creative. I think people who aren't necessarily around working creative, like, it does sound absurd, some of the weird stories or crazy work environments,
I lost the job once because I was trying to get a job. After Wizard, years later, I freelanced for a while. I lived in Springfield, Illinois for a while. I worked at a hospital. I wrote freelance comic books. I wrote the Barack Obama comic book biography.
Yes.
For some money. But I was working at Jimmy John's too, and I was trying to get a job as a PR person in the hospital I was born in, which is depressing to think about. And in the interview, I'm just trying to put my best foot forward. And I was like, I recently interviewed Willie Nelson for this music magazine, and they were just so blown away. They were like, we think you're not going to do other things. And I'm like, no, I need this job now. Like, forget Willie Nelson. Like, I needed a job very bad. I was at Jimmy John's. So it's my resume.
That's such a weird position to be in. I've been there, where you're like, you're trying to convince them that you're qualified, and then they think you're overqualified.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, I need to pay my rent soon. So I'm not overqualified.
And a girl I went to high school with got the job, and I was like, oh man, I'm just sad. I got the call that I wasn't getting that job as I was taking the trash out at Jimmy John's in the snow, fresh fallen snow, the smell of oily, slick roast beef, entailed bread, and then I got a job in St. Louis, so it was all fine. But peaks and valleys, smiles and cries. Look, you can't just be talking about Glenn Campbell all the time to national audiences.
Oh man, when my wife was confused, this is before we were
When my
married.
wife was confused.
Right. Well, my wife was confused on why her parents were not excited about her dating me. This is before we were married, and I said, well, let's look at it from their perspective. I'm a single 27-year-old artist living with his parents who sells tree houses for a living and rides a motorcycle. I wouldn't be excited about my daughter dating me, so I'm actually on their side on this one. Anyway.
Scott, you were going to ask something.
Oh yeah, so I was kind of curious, and you started to go down this route a little bit, Josh, but about sort of just the style of Wizard Magazine and that writing, and kind of what eventually how it kind of translated to basically the internet, you know. And
Yeah,
I was curious, is that, and I know you weren't with Wizard from the beginning, but was Wizard kind of did Wizard kind of invent that, or did it come from somewhere else? Because I remember like picking up like a Maxim magazine, and I'm like, this is like Wizard, but with hot chicks. It's the same style of writing. You know,
toward the end, we brought a guy in who had been at Maxim.
Yeah,
and whose name escapes me, but I don't know if we invented it, but it was that 90s snark. A lot of punching down, a lot of smartassery, a lot of privileged humor, a lot of ableist language. No, I don't know. It was of its time for sure. And we watched like The Daily Show, and we watched, like Comedy Central. Yeah, that was the main game in town. So it was like all our references were the same kind of things. And we all were pulling from the same geek wellspring of whatever. But I didn't have a deep knowledge. Like I wanted to be a writer more than I wanted to work at a comic magazine. And most of those guys were just hardcore comics guys. In fact, most of them all work in the comics industry now. And I just never had any desire to stay in the comics industry. It was pretty greasy. And now, like, I don't know, some of that's coming out, but like, it was like, it was kind of a scummy industry in some ways, like just as my experience as like a 20-something. But I was also a kid. So, I don't know if that was just business stuff, but, like, where am I going with this? I don't know.
I think you're
great
about to out some Me Tooers, I think was where.
No, there's nothing like, it was nothing like that. It was just this kind of low level, like snark, and just like everything was attitude and I don't know.
Okay. What's the most unbelievable thing that happened there where you're like, this is the
Phantom
story
Shitter.
What's that?
The Phantom Shitter.
I remember hearing about the Phantom Shitter. Please
Carry on.
This is the thing that, I mean, so many unbelievable things happen. I did a call with Brian Michael Bendis at like 3 a.m, and this was when he's not the Phantom Shitter. This is different. Though that would be amazing. But I was new, and I talked to him for like 3.5 hours. It was a career retrospective for Brian Michael Bendis, who had really only done like Ultimate Spider-Man at that point, and he started to be like the big name, and got done. And my tape recorder had only recorded my voice and nothing of his. And I had a panic that, I mean, I don't know if I could describe it. It was the cover story, it was, and I called him back and said, nothing recorded. And he laughed and graciously he goes, you know what? Let's go again. Let's go right now. Let's do this. And the second interview was so much better because we got all the crap out of the way, and it turned out to be a really good story. But it's like, I'll never forget like how gracious he was to like do that. That was crazy. But the craziest thing, I was at my desk, a normal Tuesday or whatever day. And, I'm researching, Aquaman, and Brian Cunningham comes to the office, and Brian Cunningham is a jovial guy, very low key, I've never seen many people get a rise out of him. He comes in and he's just beat red, and he's like, meeting upstairs, 10 minutes, storms off. We're like, someone's getting fired. Like, this is wild. We all go upstairs. We go to the boardroom. Is everybody here? Shuts the door. It's just dead quiet. And he's like, we have a phantom shitter. Someone has shat on the floor. Someone has shat on the seats. Someone has put toilet paper in the toilet and shat on the toilet paper. They've shat on the walls. He just kept going. And I'm just like, and now I'm sizing people up because we're not all happy. And I'm a suspect as much as anyone. Like, I feel, I'm just like, I could have done that. Like, like we all can see it, right?
Did
we all would have done this.
Did anyone in that room go on to write for The Office? Because that is a straight up episode that you just described.
No, but
including the 10 minutes Office now.
I think John Gutierrez did some pretty high profile stuff in that realm. But no, and he goes, we will find you. We will find you. We will catch you, and you will be fired. And I didn't know what to do with that information except laugh as hard as I've ever laughed later on. But they never did catch the guy, and I assume it was a guy.
Did it just happen the one time?
Kudos. Yeah, I know girls get it done too. So maybe. And they had just as right.
You don't know that it's not Brian Michael Bendis.
That would have been the perfect crime. Yeah, no. Yeah, I don't know that it wasn't Brian Michael Bendis.
Interview a second time. So but that sounds like more than one person. Or it happened over a series of days because somebody's got to be seriously backed up.
We had.
There's a second shitter at the grassy knoll.
Right.
You've seen Mindhunter.
This was
a full on. You know, we talked to the guy. Oh, I think I saw. I saw him go that way. Okay, just gathering clues here. But no, they never caught the guy. We suspect it was a guy who worked in the warehouse. But I don't want to disparage those guys, but they also would have had the guts to do it.
Oh my gosh. Wow, this is seriously some of the funniest, most interesting information I've heard in a long time.
What's the second most common?
I'm trying to think of second most. Well, you know, like the pranks were huge because Pat McCallum, this is before me, but like he had put laxatives in brownies and everyone had to go home, and then there was a new rule in the office. There was no HR. There was no HR. You know, it was like Animal House, and it was crazy. One of the funniest things that ever happened to me outside of Wizard, let's see. We used to go eat at this mall, the Palisades Mall, which is this giant mall with a Ferris wheel, and we'd go to the food court, and there was this kid sitting at the table. We were all there. I sat next to him, and then all the Wizard guys just started sitting around me, and we're all talking, blah, 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 and eventually this kid gets up and leaves, and I'm like, where's the new intern going? They're like, that's not the new intern. Like, did you know that guy? I thought you knew that guy. And nobody knew that guy. I just sat down next to him. They all saw me and sat down with me. So now we're surrounding this poor man who had no idea what was going on and just wanted to have his lunch. And we're all like, yeah, fucking the Hulk, like the shitter guy, you know. And I thought it was our new intern, and he just quietly got up and just left and never said a word. And I felt so bad. I felt so bad for him.
Oh my gosh! So I just thought of something I'm surprised we haven't asked you about yet. So you wrote for those. You edited the letters column, so you must have gotten some pretty absurd letters, and then also interacting with readers. With the readership that Wizard had at the time, like what did sorting through those letters look like? What sort of strange mail did you guys get?
They were legit letters. Like,
yeah,
I would say, email was already a thing by this point. It was like 2003 or 4. So it wasn't like Gmail though. I mean, it was like a Yahoo account or something. But we got a good, I would say 60% of it was physical letters. And you think of the kind of person who would write a letter to a magazine. And that's exactly the kind of letters I got. And I got one written from a prison. And on the back, I got a lot of prison mail. We had a prison mail section because, you know, a lot of guys in prison read me. So
that makes sense.
A letter.
Please make
Mail
that into
day.
a shirt.
A guy from prison sent me a Wonder Woman he had airbrushed in shop class on a rag.
No.
And I was like, I can't touch this. I got a letter written from a guy who said, I can't get Dark Horse Comics in here. And by in here, he means federal prison. So he was upset about that he couldn't get Dark Horse Comics.
Yeah, they need
and
to up their
on the back
prison
of the
distro.
letter, he had written it on the back of a complaint about him and outlined how he had stabbed somebody in the yard and how the guards had to pull him off and how he stabbed them and he was in solitary. And it was like a frankly brutal, frankly like shocking. Like I'd never seen anything like it. And I didn't know if it was his way of like bragging or like that's all he had to write on, but it was a full account of this violent assault. But that wasn't even the craziest guy. There's this guy who wrote me who lived in Detroit. We had this section called Weirdo Mail where we would just be like, you're a weirdo and make fun of you. And it was supposed to be like a badge of honor. Like we roasted you, you know. But this guy was serious. He wrote me a letter that said he couldn't make out with a girl unless the movie Fantastic Four was on in the background. And does it matter which Fantastic Four? Not really. It was just weird. And I thought he was joking, so I roasted him. And he called every number, and he left messages on every voicemail in the office. I'm a born-again Christian. This Chris Ward, I'm a professional type person in Detroit, and Chris Ward, I think you ought to fire this guy. He's a real loose cannon. And he called me a loose cannon, which no one's ever called me. If anyone calls you in earnest a loose cannon and does not ask for your badge and your gun, that's a weird day. And I used to play it on. I saved that voicemail I still have it, and I used to play it on the radio when I was on the radio. At night, I would play it on the radio a lot. It was really fun.
That's
this guy
great.
was just hilarious to be called a loose. This Chris Ford is a loose cannon. So I got a reputation. I don't know, maybe unearned, but so yeah, letters like that. Most of it was just like, could the Hulk beat Superman? And you'd have to like call. You would have to call an adult. Let's say you're a comic book writer. You're a DC comic book writer, and you're already not making a lot of money, and you're working hard, and it's hard work, and you're on deadline. And these 20-year-old kids are calling you like all the time, like, could Hulk beat the Ben? And like, could Flash run up a flagpole? And he's like, and they had to give you a real answer because I'm like, I can't just write. Like, I think it was like Jeff Loeb or someone who was like, they're all made up. They're fictional. This is made up stories. Say whatever you want, you know, like, but usually they were usually pretty game, you know, and certain guys loved getting quotes in the magazine. And so that was kind of fun, but we had to take it seriously. I had to call Oscar Mayer and say, was a hot dog a sandwich? And I had to get Oscar Mayer to weigh in on this and just stir up, you know, it was fun. And it was the only section of the magazine where I got to like sign my name. And
yeah.
So it was like an honor to do that. And now, I mean, this thing doesn't exist. There's no 5-page letter column.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? What is that even? So it was a weird thing.
I have a quick question. I have a vague memory of, did you get to interview Mr. T? Am I misremembering that?
Yeah, I interviewed Mr. T. I still have his number. I don't think it's the same number. But yeah, that was, I don't get starstruck. Like, I'm not like a, you know, like it was your job, you know, and you call these people and they bore you. Like my thing, like I would always want to get interesting questions. So I'm talking to Eva Mendes, who's in Ghost Rider, the Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider. And all the questions are like about stunts and stuff. And she's going on. And I'm like, hey, like when you're at Wendy's, chocolate frosty or vanilla frosty? And she's like, vanilla frosty, and I'm like, wrong. And then we get into it about, and to me, it's much more interesting to read about Eva Mendez's frosty preference. And then I would turn this in, and Brian Cunningham would come storming in and go, "What the hell is this? Like, we can't run this. Like, you didn't talk about Ghost Rider. You talked about ice cream." And I'm like, well, that's more interesting. But
No doubt.
apparently just to me. But yeah, I talked to Mr. T about his comic book, and that was a really starstruck moment because he sounds. I'm actually working. It's funny. I'm working on a jigsaw puzzle. That's him right there.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, I'm working on the history of television jigsaw puzzle.
That's awesome. Mr. T would be like, I don't get super nervous or starstruck, but Mr. T would be one that I would just, I don't even know what I'd say because it's Mr. T.
Yeah,
It's like,
I love Mr. T as a kid.
We talked about his comic, but he really he did all the hits. He did I Pity the Fool. Every cloud has a silver lining. You know, he just sounds like, I mean, he was just wonderful. And so those were a lot of fun.
Rad.
You know, Stan Lee, like, of course, Stan Lee, you're going to, Jim McLaughlin was like, have you ever met Stan? Because he's, you know, he was good friends with him. And I'm like, no. And I'm like, you know, 23 and freaking out. And he runs me to the front of the line. He's like, this is Chris Ward, Magic Words. And Stan Lee's like, I love Magic Words. And like, he knows. If he knows.
Yeah, he probably says that about everything.
I'm just like, yeah, you read me? You read Wizard? And I got my like horrible picture where I'm like, it looks horrible and I can't even find it now. And it's just like, you know, I just blew it. Or Margot Kidder. Here's a story. Margot Kidder was at I had to do a little story on Margot Kidder, a little sidebar, 2 quotes. And she's giving me this interview and she goes, now we're a nice publication, right? And I'm like, I don't know what that means. And her publicist is like, we're not going to say anything bad, right? And I'm like, I need two quotes, you know, not an expose. Because she's guarded. She's had some history in the press. And then treated unkindly. So I understand. And I start getting and then I ask her some random question about a movie she was in with Gary Busey, just because I thought it was funny. Like, what was it like to work with Gary Busey? It was horrible. What a horrible man. And then she talks about Gary Busey for a long time. And then she's like, I'm like, I can't use any of this. And then she goes, can you get me into the party tonight? And I'm like, I don't know of any party. And she's like, I heard there's a party. There's an after party. And can you get me in? Actually, if you want to know the truth, she's like, I can't go. I'm not going. It's for my agent, Jeff. He'd like to get in the party. Can you get him in the party? And I'm like, sure, Margot Kidder. I can get your agent, Jeff, into the party. So she writes me, hold on. I think I have this. I don't know if it's in here. I had it. I can't find it. She wrote me I can't find it. It's on the back it's a headshot of her. And on the back, she's like, please let Jeff blah, blah, blah into the Wizard party, which sounds hilarious if you don't know what a magazine is. Let him into the Wizard party? Like, are all the wizards there?
Oh man, that's rife for a future conspiracy theory. If somebody comes across that artifact, they're going to be like, I told you they were wizards. I told you.
And of course he didn't show up, but I have this headshot and I have her scrawling hall pass on the back, Margot Kidder, and it's like the most insane thing. But it used to be in this book, but it's gone. So I don't know where it is.
proof that the magical community had infiltrated Hollywood as early as
Ooh, Margot Kidder's here. Get your sleeves looking good. Are your hats pointy? So, yeah, it was wild shit. I don't know what we were talking about.
What was the stupidest thing that you were ever asked to do?
Good question.
Stupidest thing. God, I should have that at the ready.
Like I will give you. I'll go ahead if you've got one.
No, go ahead. I'm not sure.
I was gonna say, I I had to write the dialogue for an animatronic skeleton that was going in a mini golf course. That's I think
I'm in marketing. I'm in advertising and marketing now too. So I feel your pain. Like I've had to write things for like Walmart magazine for NASCAR drivers as the NASCAR driver in their voice. I don't know if you know that's how it works. Yep. You know, sometimes PR people just write all this stuff. So I don't know how many of these interviews I did that were actually, I don't know if that was Marlon Wayans on the other end. Probably not.
Probably his agent. Yeah.
Just his PR guy. But that's how it works. So, you know, I wrote an article as a Jughead for an Archie magazine. And it was like it was like, we want you to review video games as Jughead. And I'm like, and I'm like, Sonic the Hedgehog is great. I need a cheeseburger. And like, I don't know. What do you want from me? Give me the $50. Just please give me the $50. You just do it. Stupidest thing. I mean, they made me dress up like Galactus and pose in Inquest magazine with like 12-sided die. That was pretty stupid. Judging the scavenger hunt when everybody mails all that shit in for the scavenger hunts and you have to go through all that. It's a nightmare. That was pretty stupid. Judging fan film submissions. I mean, it was all stupid was the job, you know, it was just everything was stupid. The money was really stupid.
There's the quote when promoting this video. Stupid was the job.
Stupid was the job.
Stupid is as stupid does.
It sounds like that also might be the appeal of working at a job like that, because you're living in sort of silliness, like in like the best of ways.
Yeah, and you don't realize sure, at the time how good
it's got to be hard to sustain though at that income, you know, like.
Yeah, it was. I was engaged at the time when I lived in New York, and I'm no longer married. We're friends. She married my best friend. Anyway, so we were engaged, and she was like, "I'm going to come out like in 8 months," and I'm like, "Awesome." And in that time, I had to move, and Alex Segura, who was my first boss there, and we're like best friends to this day, and he's amazing. He's a novelist and all this stuff, and he was head of Archie, and now I think he's at God, I can't remember the company. Does anyone know this? He's gonna kill me. He's not gonna kill me. Anyway, he's at a comic book company, but he lived in this weird little house with this elderly Italian couple in the middle of nowhere, and this guy flipped pigeons in his backyard and stuff. It was kind of a crazy situation. And he said, "You can live in the basement, but they think you're."
What is flipping pigeons?
It's where you let pigeons go and they leave and then they come back at some point.
Homing pigeons, yeah.
You see it on like, have you seen Ghost Dog?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of like that.
All right.
It's like a hobby. It's like a New York hobby. I don't know. I thought baklava was a Jewish dessert.
It's something you learn about at the bodega.
It's something they do. Chris, quickly get to the bodega and flip some pigeons.
Right.
The only time I've been to New York, I went to go to the New York Ukulele Festival and ended up in the basement of the Ukulele Mansion playing an empty beer box because they ran out of percussion instruments. That's 100% of my New York knowledge. So I don't know half the references you're saying anyway. So.
What is this magical land of New York? I don't remember what I was saying, but it's okay.
You were mentioning Alex Segura.
A basement.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Basement.
Anyway, I had to move. So that was the thing. Like, I mean, you had to live somewhere. And he was like, you can live in this basement. And it was way too small. And he's like, but they think you're married. And I'm like, what? Like, we're getting married? And he's like, no, they think you're already married. And they won't give you the apartment unless you say you're married. And also that she's on her way out here. So I went and bought a fake wedding ring and wore this wedding ring while I lived with these old people who were purple. They were old. You ever mean old people were just like her hair was blue.
Is that also a New York thing?
That's a New York thing. You turn purple. It's gonna eat at too many diners. Yeah. Too many Broadway shows. Turned my toes purple. So they're, they turn out to be not great people. Like they're mean. And I had paid them my deposit, which was $200, which was like all my money. And then I moved all my stuff in. And then halfway through the weekend, he came in and said, I've been thinking, and it's too small for two people. You got to move. And I'm like, well, I get my deposit back. Nah, deal's a deal. I've been there 2 days.
Oh, God.
So I'm functionally homeless. And Alex is freaking out. He's like, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. And Alex helps me find a new place in White Plains. We live with a guy. So when my wife finally moved out, we lived with this stranger for a year, this stranger. And that was a weird situation. But that was you had this kind of vagabond existence, like moving around and just trying to make rent. It was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that sounds pretty familiar to I think the life a lot of freelance illustrators or designers have to, especially when you're first getting in the game, it's just like you do what it takes.
Don't be fooled by my background. This stained glass is pretty standard in most St. Louis apartments. Everyone's like, are you in a mansion? What kind of church is this? And those trophies are third place pinball trophies. So I just felt like I needed to have a little something back there. But yeah. I do have this is the Wizard Fan Award, one of them.
Hell yeah.
I stole this when I left. It was under my desk. And I'm like, I'm taking this. This one is for 10th Annual Wizard Fan Awards. Favorite miniseries, Kevin O'Neill, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So, Kevin, I'm keeping this.
Oh, snap.
Okay, I have a question. I have a question that you can choose not to answer if you want.
No, that's fine.
What's the best story of somebody getting blacklisted?
Oh.
Oh,
no. Sorry, I didn't do that. I mean, I got blacklisted, sort of. Like,
yeah, how did that happen?
Well, when I quit, around the time I quit, everyone was getting fired by this time, and all the shine was coming off Wizard. People were starting. Their shady business practices were sort of starting to float to the forefront. There was some sort of fuckery with like people's money, and it's all online. You can read about it. But we were like getting our shots in. This is like, yes, finally getting back at Wizard. And I had some personal grudge for some reason against Gareb Shamus, but really I just thought it was funny, like, because he seems like such a guy that you can screw with. Like, he just gave off this like vibe, and we did. My wife and I created a whole album of Gareb Shamus songs, and through the great, and it's good. It's like I love the lyrics. My now ex-wife told me just a few months ago. She goes, I think that was the best thing we ever did together. And I was like, I think you're right.
And still find like you can still listen.
Yeah.
If anyone's interested, Google.
Actually,
that was funny because I also
have the link to that album in the show notes, you guys. So you can check that out.
It got some press. It was an in-joke for 0.3% of the people in the world. And I just wanted him to hear it and get annoyed, which I'm sure he did, because I heard I was persona non grata at one point. That I couldn't come to any more shows. And I just said a lot of public stuff to piss him off. And I was trolling him pretty hard on Facebook back when that didn't seem like a scummy thing. And now it just seems like, well, I'm 40, so it would be weird. His job was 20 years ago. I don't know how many of you have a job where you're like 20 years later and I'm just, we're going to get him.
The guy that I worked for 20
years ago.
I had 3 people that work for me now that worked for me then, and we still like make fun of the guy that I was working for in the early 2000s.
It's so fun. Oh, we make fun of him for sure. There's like Wizard employee groups, like little Facebook groups that we like still talk shit, you know, and it's fun. But I don't know if you could say this for anybody else. I'm on a daily email chain with like 15 to 20 wizard guys, and we talk every day by email. And I'm like, guys, can we move this to Slack
or Discord or something?
Just Gmail, and it's insane. And you know, but I don't have any friends and coworkers I talk to daily like that. I mean, it's wild. And so they're all the best dudes, and they're the funniest guys. And like, I had not too long ago went on a trip just to have kind of a mini reunion. It was Jesse Thompson, myself, Ryan Panagos, Ricky Purden, the Price Guide guys, which I heard you guys talking about the Price Guide, which I wanted to rave about. But I had not laughed that hard. I don't even remember the last time I laughed that hard. I forgot that I could laugh that hard. And I was like, I really miss this. But yeah, those Price Guide guys, you said that it was kind of questionable, like the prices in the back.
100%.
They all day were calling. They worked in a closet, like a literal closet, sat back to back, and they called comic shops all day around the country, all day. What's this selling for? What's that selling for? Hey man, how's it going? This is selling for Wizard. And from that, they would spin up some whatever, and like, you know, like it was worth that because Wizard said it was worth that. You know,
yeah, that's
like,
true.
And there wasn't really a lot of fuckery with like, we're gonna say this is worth, you know, it wasn't like that. And I'm sure. No, I don't want to say anything, but I'm sure there was some shenanigans somewhere going on with this. I mean, we certainly were broke. And the one time I got to take advantage of this was around Christmas one year. We all got a Jim Lee exclusive sketch cover of Batman 800 and something. And we were like, it was like a insider trading tip. It was like, yo, this is going to be worth a lot of money. So it's going to be $800 on eBay right now if you sell it now. And I sold it so I could get a ticket home for Thanksgiving and for the holidays. You know, I sold it for $800. And or you'd see stuff out on the free table, it was called, and you could pilfer that and sell it on eBay. There was a lot of that going on just to make ends meet. So it wasn't like, I mean, nobody was getting loaded. Maybe some guys at the top, but I don't know. But the Price guys worked their asses off for sure. But it was weird. It was this science, or I don't know what it was. You know, it was all speculative, of course, and then the bubble bursts.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think that's a hard thing to calculate pre, you know, the age of the internet where you have active bidders for things. You start seeing like actual value kind of come out of that. But like pre-internet, like how
eBay did start to drive some of that stuff. When I was there, eBay started to become a thing. So that eBay was driving a lot of that too.
That's crazy.
Gary, when did we meet?
We met, I think it was 2005. We were freelancing for Village Voice Media, reviewing video games for their new video game column in print no less. When did it transition to the blog? Before we started, just so the audience knows, so we met freelance writing right on the cusp of print, just totally the bottom falling out of it. Like,
wait. How do you meet freelance writing?
The Village Voice took on like three people at once. So they posted an ad in all the Village Voice papers around, all the Village Voice owned papers around the country. So like, depending on where you are, like in my neck of the woods, it was the New Times. In New York, it would have been Village Voice. But like every state, I think, had its own Village.
In Denver, it was the Westward.
Yes.
Westward, Riverfront Times in St. Louis. So all those alt weeklies.
They were all owned by the same company, and so like the same people would write for it, and they would just push them to all the papers around the country. They put an ad in the front saying, "We are going to start a video game column," if you like, if your Pac-Man pellets from your whatever, like please send
it was
in,
really
right?
bad. Yeah.
It was really bad, really, where you're like, I already know I know more about video games than whoever wrote this. And so it was just like a shot in the dark, kind of like you're like trying to be an intern. I was just like, I'll write up.
And I was already a staff writer at that point, and I had asked for $30,000. I was making $24,500 at that point, and they laughed at me. Like $30,000? No.
Right.
And that week, a guy who was a parking lot attendant had won the lottery, and on the front page it said, "Parking lot attendant hits it big." He was only making $30,000 a year before that.
Oh man!
And I'm like, I could be a parking lot attendant, and people are like, "Hey man, I saw your article. It's translated into Spanish. I picked it up on my honeymoon." And I'm like, "That's great. I need a sandwich." So that was the perspective. So I needed something else going. I'm like, I gotta have money, and that was something I stumbled across. And then I did the interview, and then Gary and I wrote, and I was like, I like this guy's writing and stuff. And then we both were like, this editor's a little
right.
He was getting under our skin on something. So I emailed Gary. I'm like, Gary, what's going on with this guy?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah.
And
then we're griping about, like people gripe about work.
Right.
You gripe about your boss. So we bonded over, like many of my friends, we bonded over hatred of something.
We did. And we were, I think you'll agree, like so bitchy about it. We were terrible. Oh. That's another
we weren't great.
At this age, I wouldn't have written any of that stuff. But looking back, it was just like, let's really talk shit about this editor, which I'm going to say, like, he fully deserved. But, like, it was unprofessional. But
it was a lot of like, he would pretty much rewrite the entire column to the point where I was like, I don't even want to put my name on this. Like, these are, if they're going to be my bad jokes, I want them to be my bad jokes. And they weren't that great to begin with. I mean, I should have just been like, just take the money. Like, I was really, this is important. This is games journalism.
We laugh about it now. I was full of a bunch of righteous
but it was new,
integrity. Yeah, like I wanted to write. I really had the mentality like I want to be the Lester Bangs of video game reviewers. Like I really was like high-minded about it. So when he would say, like give this like bad feedback, I was usually immediately on the phone with you saying like this fucking guy. Like, I can't do this anymore. I like this.
Because we were really precious about it.
Super precious. Yeah, super precious. So, but do you remember?
I wanted to be the Gene Shalit of video game review.
Do you remember Chris once? He gave me a heart attack. It was one of these, we had a long email string going back and forth about this one particular editor. We had a couple editors at this time. And Chris, I still don't understand how you did this.
I forgot about this.
You CC'd one of the other editors, like on our like multi-month trash talking about the guy he shared an office with.
Yeah.
Like that was the thing. And as soon as I saw what happened, I called you up. I was like, what did you do? Like, I mean, like we're fired. Say so long to that $300 a week now, but like that's not going to happen, And
is this something that happened, or was this where I made a fake email and like one letter was off?
I don't know how you did it. You never.
That's usually how I did that kind of stuff.
I don't know how you did it, but you did. And like I was so horrified that you were like spiraling, and I was like, let me try and fix this. Let me try. Because I was young, I thought I could do anything. I was like, I'll handle it. Don't you worry. And so I called. I didn't email. I called that editor, not the one we were trash talking about, the one who sits next to him that we had just forward all our, I called him and I was like, excuse me, sir. I just want to let you know, Chris and I were just, talking about the boss. And it was very unprofessional. I'm very ashamed about it. But somehow he CC'd you on the email. And I'm very embarrassed. And he's very embarrassed. And I hope you can understand, like, put it in, I just, like, try whatever. I, like, flail. And fortunately, he was like, he thought that guy was just as much of a tool as we did. So he
That's
just loved
right.
it. He loved every,
it.
like, and
He
that's
loved
the
it.
only
I
reason.
forgot about that.
Yeah.
That we lucked into that one.
Yeah. Very lucky.
Another fine mess we got ourselves in.
Right. Right. But anyway, so as I was saying, like, we got in right when print collapsed, because when we started at Village Voice, we were expected to do a 300-word game review for each piece we did, and we would get $300, so $1 a word, which was kind of that was sort of industry standard, decent freelance writing, you know, like $1 a word.
I got $600.
Nice. Right. So like so we got $1 a word. Now that's when it started. And I thought, like, this is the beginning of my big career. I'm gonna be a million, you know, like, I can't wait. This was my
first be 100 air.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be 100 air.
Yes, okay. That's when I got the idea for Dogecoin.
Right. And it was all up from there. Within 18
to
months,
the moon, the whole
18 months, it went from $1 a word to 10 cents a word. Like, that's how quickly print died. Like, it just immediately collapsed.
And then
it wasn't in
it,
print anymore. It was on the blog.
Remember when we got replaced by a food column? I was working at a hospital at the time. I was a pharmacy technician.
Yeah.
And they called and said, we're replacing you with this food column that's called like spooning, not forking or something. And I was like, fuck you. I was so mad.
That's exactly what it was called. That's actually, that was what it was called.
Oh,
spooning, not forking. And it lasted like 2 months. Like, and then that collapsed, and they replaced that with like a sex advice column. Mm-hmm. Like it was just like, and I remember when we switched over the blog, like when we shut down the print side, I had written a blog. Like, it was a thing where they wanted like 4 things a week from you, 4 posts a week from you on the blog, the Village Voice blog.
For $40.
Yeah, exactly. They wanted you. I don't know what they're expecting. They wanted you to just shave your head and devote your life to like writing infographics for the video game column. So I had written a thing about like how, you know, it was, I did a really, it was hacky, but remember I was younger. I did a tombstone and photoshopped, it said print, and it had like year to like 2000 whatever. Like that was, and I was talking about how like the print column is no more. And I got reprimanded. They were furious. Meanwhile, these motherfuckers
that was bad.
10 cents a word and replaced our column with spooning, not forking. And they're mad at me because I called a spade, saying like, you know, print is dead.
I want to point out that there's
photoshopped Sonic the Hedgehog into the Twin Towers. Like, you can't.
Yeah,
you can't do that, Gary.
You can't do that. That's inappropriate. I never did that.
He never did that.
I want to point out that there is an alternate dimension where they didn't replace you guys with those, they combined them, and you were started to give video game players sex advice, and it actually there was no January 6th insurrection.
Or food pairing.
That was actually a good idea.
Yeah. If Link from Legend of Zelda was a sandwich, what sandwich would he be? Like, it would, they just merged it all.
If Link was courting Zelda, what was the appropriate way to do that?
Right. Yeah. But it was fun. I mean, we had a lot of fun writing our.
Now, when Dodongo dislikes bodegas.
Were you guys at one point when you were doing the game writing, was that in-house or was that like from like telecommunications?
Yeah, it was freelance. Okay. But it was during the golden age of rhythm games. So right when I started was almost the exact time they were like, there's this new game we're going to send you. It's called Guitar Hero. And I got a giant box in the mail and I'm like, this looks like a Fisher Price thing. And I'm like, you know, and then I was like, this rules. And I was like, everyone's gonna. And I was like, all in on Guitar Hero, and then Guitar Hero 2, 3, Rock Band 2. And there's this picture of me. It's still on the internet.
Yeah.
It was called The Peripheral Problem, and it's me with all these plastic instruments. I think I've got it here. Yeah, I was just making fun of this the other day with somebody.
Yeah.
And you know, it's me with all these like instruments on this couch, like,
you
know, and Kotaku found that and like memed it. Like I was this loser. Like I was this guy showing off his collection.
Right.
And it like persisted for a while. I was like the loser guy with.
We got referenced on Kotaku a few times, which is probably weird for people now. Like if you're still into the video game thing, Kotaku's pretty big. Like we weren't that big then, but they were still small enough where there was a little bit of back and forth. Like,
yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was on the, I don't know. It was $600. That's all I know.
Yeah.
Or 300, whatever it was.
600 a month.
That's right. 600 a month. Okay.
We were alternating.
Right.
Yeah. We were living. It was crazy. But
I on the hog.
I was fully telling people, like, what do you do for a living? It's like, I'm a freelance writer for Village Voice Media. It sounds like super legit. It's like it's $600 a month writing about Metal Gear.
Yeah. Writing about Cooking Mama 2.
Okay. Which I think I reviewed. Yeah.
As those rhythm games were taking off, I was on the other side of the industry selling actual instruments. So I was working for a company that produced guitars and drums. And that was the first time in recorded history where there was a downturn in the economy and actual music sales didn't go up, because every time there's an inverse relationship. When the economy is doing really well, people don't buy instruments, but when the economy starts to tank, they start to stay home and fix their guitars up and learn a new song, or they lost their job, so they pick up a skill. And there were articles. There's 4 trade magazines in that industry, and there were articles just trashing those games. Like all of these people are pretending to be musicians instead of actually being musicians, and they're putting people out of business. These video games.
Yeah, sure. I was freelancing for a music magazine at that time too, and I used to ask people if they thought I could beat them at their own songs. And Rivers Cuomo from Weezer, I had talked to him, and I was like, "Do you think I could beat you on Guitar Hero?" And he's like, "Probably. I hate those games, man. Why don't you just get a real guitar?" And he went on this diatribe about Guitar Hero. Cut to like a year later, and it's like he's in the commercial, the risky business. Right. No. But those, and I was like, "Fuck you!" I think I put it on my blog. I'm like, "Here's what he said. Here's what he did." Right. And I thought it was gonna blow the news outlets out of the water.
Oh yeah, and
there were a couple times we
exclusive. I've got
exclusive
on tape saying he hates Guitar Hero. And what's this? He took a bag of money to be in the commercial. Hypocrite. Like Gary did a story. Gary
laughed at you as he blew his nose into $100 bills.
Yes.
I did
like a 19-part story on expose on the video game industry and their
investigative journalism. Like there was
hilarious now.
I am so into these stories.
This video game, it was so small time, and boy, I felt like it's like now I'm going to be able to write my own check. Like, okay, this.
I remember you calling me like I'm in too deep. Like,
I was panicked.
Like people are going to come after you.
I was afraid.
This was like voice modulators on the phone.
This was Gary's 3 Days of the Condor. It was just.
It totally was. It was absolutely like the Pentagon Papers. No, so there was this tiny little video game PR shop.
I'm sorry, I'm just having this visual of you and Chris like in a smoke-filled office, like talking to
like big wide lapel jackets and fat ties, and
you kind of telling Chris, you're like, I gotta go disappear and interview somebody, and then you go to like a dark parking lot to.
And someone's like, "That's
you're like
far
writing
enough.
A note, like if I am found dead, I am very happy, and I did not commit suicide." Yeah,
but you know what? The people had to know.
Yeah, and I'm like, look, I just need to review Donkey Kong. And
this is, by the way, this is probably still. It's certainly still on the internet somewhere. But anyway, there was this little PR shop, a video game PR shop, that they had the angle, and I'm sure lots of places were doing this. But Chris loves this so much. So they had the angle of, hey, here's an idea. We'll start our own little game review site and we'll give good, like gushing reviews of the games that we've been hired to do PR for.
Ah, payola scam. I love it.
And me, exactly, it was payola. And me being the one who's like, I'm going to be like, we're going to do like, look, watch out, stand back from my integrity. Like, I was appalled and offended and disgusted. Like, I was full of all this righteous indignation. And I was like, I'm going to burn them to the ground. To the ground. Like, I mean, it was just all like, they're going to pay for this. So like, we had some sources, and I was able to almost forensically piece together how the scam worked and who worked where and how they have employees in common and how they have the same like address listed in their business registration documents. Like, it was this whole thing. Like, I was bringing down the mob. Like, I felt like this was,
tell them
and
what the article's name. Tell
for
them
the
name
cherry
of
on
article.
top, I called the owner. And I recorded the call, and I had like investigative, sharp questioning. And this guy, he was in his like convertible driving somewhere, and he had this dipshit like telling like, and I had all the receipts. I knew everything. And I was like asking him all these questions, and I recorded it. And he's like, I thought he was going to crash. Like, he was like stammering and sputtering. Yeah.
What's this? You're a video game what now? Journalist?
He was appalled.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I got all the confessions out of him. We wrote this up, Chris, and we ran it. And I was sitting there really worried, like, this guy's going to sue.
Well, when you ran it, because Chris was curious what the, like, if you could mention.
You got to tell him what the
it.
name of the article was. My favorite.
Oh my God!
It was like,
a slave of two masters.
It was like PR studio, a slave with two masters.
That's right.
And I'm like,
right.
Jesus Christ, what is this?
So we posted.
One hand washes the other. The Saints of Newark. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was huge, and it actually put them out of business. Yes. It actually did, like, but it was like 7 employees. Like, I mean, it was like no one even. I thought. You thought too, though. No revisionist history. We all thought. This was going to blow up. That like every video
this
game
is it.
site everywhere.
Payday.
And like it's like Gary Hodges has done like amazing. And, you know, like this is like going to be.
I want to thank you guys. For you know, we did it.
Woodward,
we did
Bernstein, and Hodges.
We did it.
We took them down. I want to thank our shitty editor. I want to thank Garib.
Chris and Gary, you guys like
did it for the people. I did it for the truth.
You guys need to collab and do that story, but like it's all the president's men. You know.
It was like burn after. It was more like burn after reading.
Like the gaming journalist community reacted more with kind of like
you were very much. It was very like burn after reading. You're like, you know where your shit is.
Right.
And he's like, who is this?
Who is this? Right. Right. Yeah. I was like Brad Pitt getting in the car with John Malkovich saying like, yes, I'm Mr. Black. You know, like, I mean, it was a really well-written piece. I was full on this idea that this is way more important than it is.
Yeah.
The deep, really quick, the deepest I ever got in at Wizard was because I was the humor guy, but I sort of cut my teeth doing serious pieces like in college. And I have, a journalism degree, and I cared about writing and real journalism. And I had it and I could do it. And I didn't want to just be Mr. Joke guy. And so I was doing this Rob Liefeld piece, the history of Rob Liefeld. And the more stories I heard, the more insane it was that the editors were like, we can't run this. He'll sue us. And I'm like, it's all true. And then one by one, his sources started backing out. They'd say, yeah, this might be a coincidence, but Rob Liefeld's he drove past my house. Or I ran into him at the grocery store, and I'm just getting weird. And I'm like, that was that same vibe where I'm like, I'm in too deep. And then I met Rob Liefeld at a Comic-Con. He's like, you're the guy writing the story, right? And he like shook my hand, like, you know, like grinding my bones. He had like one of those hats, you know, I'm Rob Liefeld. Like, you're the guy. And just this crazy look in his eye. And I'm just like, I want this to be a balanced story. I want to tell these stories. And he's just like Margot Kidder's people, you're going to do a good story on me, right? Just fucking nuts. And then they never did run it. You know, it would have been great, I'm sure. But, you know, and then he went on to make all this money. And because he was a joke, you know, it was like, oh, he had all these high profile meetings with like Will Smith and all these people in the 90s. And they got paid so much money. And, you know, they were just rock stars. But when I was there, it was that downturn where Rob Liefeld was a joke. He was a joke, man. And we didn't like always take shots at him in the magazine, but sometimes it was just too easy. But then, you know, Deadpool got made and like all his shit started getting made and he's a big deal. And I thought, you know, like he seemed happy online. I was like, good for this guy. You know, he got paid. He made all this money, but he's still a total thin-skinned asshole online. And I'm like, how much money why are you talking to me? Like, yeah. And why, like he blocked me for something, which is hilarious. Cause it's like, who am I? Like, I'm like, go, you know, he's got so much money. It's insane. It's like, why are you on Twitter? Like, but that story would have been great, but I got to write a pretty big story on Harvey Picar and write around that is in this book. I've got this,
that makes me really excited because I'm a huge Picar fan.
Well, that reminds me. This is I'm going for the first time. He drew me this little thing. Come back and visit us sometime. I spent the whole day with him. He went driving the wrong way on the interstate. So me and Harvey Picar going the wrong way on the interstate in Cleveland. He's going, motherfucker. And he's like, ah. And that was like one of my favorite memories, and just to talk to him after the fact and stuff. I'm actually going to Cleveland. I haven't been to Cleveland since when I moved from New York to Illinois. I called him and said, hey, I'm coming through. I can stop by if you want. And he said, I don't know if it's a good day, man. Like Joyce left me. And I'm like, what? Like, he said his wife left him. And this is the most famously depressed man on what sounds like the worst day of his life. And I'm like, okay, we won't. This sounds, you know, no, come over. Jesus Christ. Okay. So my wife and I go to Harvey Picar's house on the day his wife has left him. And he's on the couch and he's just like, I got this new thing coming out for DC. You want to look at it? And I'm like, yeah, you know, and it's Harvey Picar's house. You know, he's got his records and it's like, it's amazing, you know, and all I can think about is all my shit's in my car and it's unlocked because the cat's in the car. And I'm just worried about the cat the whole time. Does he have enough air? It's not a great neighborhood, you know, like, and so I was just like reading, he made me read his script in front of him and he sat on the couch and just dead and stared at me the whole time with his buggy eyes. And I'm like, you know, it's great, man. Like, I think it's great. And it's stick figures. And, you know, we talked and then I left. And that's the last time I saw him in person, you know, and we talked on the phone here and there. And then, you know, he passed away several years ago. But I got my name on they did a GoFundMe for a little statue in the library, like of Harvey Picar. And I got my name on the plaque and I've never gotten to see it. So I'm going to Cleveland in a week and I'm going to get to see all that stuff. But yeah, that was my warmest memory probably, was just meeting and getting to talk to Harvey Picar. There were times, I feel stupid now. There are times I didn't answer the phone because I'm like, I can't right now with Harvey. Like, I can't. You know, because he complains, you know, he is exactly who he was in the movie and the comics. And it was a lot of like complaining. And at that time in my life, I just thought, I just don't have, you know, and now it's insane to think like.
I remember it was early. After we had met, you had said something about how Harvey had left like this long rambling voicemail and like you just couldn't deal with it. And I had just watched that movie with Paul Giamatti, and I just could not. I was like, wait a minute, wait, you mean like the same? You know, I just could. Yeah. You don't want to listen to the voicemail? Like, I was completely gobsmacked.
I saw that too. This was I'll find it in a second. I don't have much stuff. I have this. Oh yeah, I took these. Look at this horrible picture. Look at look at this, so terrible. These were gonna be for the magazine. They're like, Chris, you're doing the story. Can you get a few photos for the article? This is what I gave them.
I mean,
so they didn't use these, but I don't have a lot of stuff from that time. I kept a sketchbook. You know, you go to conventions, you talk to people.
Yeah.
You know, occasionally you'll get a little something done. I don't have a lot of stuff from that time, like up here.
Yeah.
That's incredible, though. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we are getting close to like almost like the
Jesus,
2 hour
2
mark.
hours, yeah.
But I have to say,
Apologies.
like, honestly, we usually like we'll go like an hour and 30, but it's just been so good. Like
sorry, I should have asked beforehand because I
No,
usually
no,
have
no,
radio.
No, this
No,
was
no, no.
I
fantastic.
kind of want to do a lightning round.
Yeah. This
Well,
has
I'm
been
clearly
so-
I'm clearly have nothing going on. So anytime you want to hear an old man talk about a 30-year-old magazine.
Okay,
Honestly-
Chris, lightning round, dumb answers only. Ready?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, yeah.
How do you break into comics?
Zip.
Okay, where do your ideas come from?
Oh, that's always a good one.
Like David
get
Lynch.
your
Like,
ideas
ideas are like fish. You catch the fish.
Okay,
Yeah.
where do babies
That was
come
the
from?
whole.
How is Babby formed?
Where do babies come from?
How is Babby formed is a much better
How
question.
is Babby formed?
Oh my gosh.
I don't know where babies come from.
All right.
Okay, last one. Hulk versus Superman.
Hulk. Superman sucks, man. Superman just sucks. He
Yeah.
just sucks. Like, fucking sucks. Why? That's the one thing I hated about being on DC because, okay, so you had to act like you cared about DC Comics, you know, and because you had to write about them. And they brought me to the office one time, and it's like Dan DiDio and like Jim Lee and like, you know, Grant Morrison. And they're like, they brought me into a room and they're like, you have to sign this non-disclosure agreement. We're going to tell you who we're going to kill in Identity. And we have this book coming. It's called Identity Crisis. And it's coming in 6 months to a year. And sign this form. And me and Brian Cunningham signed this non-disclosure agreement. And they go, okay. We're going to kill Blue Beetle. And I'm like, who the fuck is Blue Beetle? I have no idea. And I'm just like, whoa. And they're like, and Max Lord is going to do it. And I'm like, that's crazy. I don't know who any of these characters are. And mind you, by the time I'm friends with Keith Giffen by this time. So I'm like, I don't know. And so I had to act like I knew character, you know, where I'm sure most people would be like, whoa, you know, that wasn't my thing. I was a Marvel guy. So
Yeah.
And the thing is, anytime anyone says any character dies in a comic book, you know they're going to be back in a year anyway. So it's like, okay, yeah.
back to the book. This is an embarrassing book. At the time, I got Rags Morales to draw me this Blue Beetle with a bullet in his head. Can you see it? I don't know.
Oh, it kind of.
Hold on, I'll get it so I can.
Yeah.
So it's Blue Beetle with a bullet in his head, and it says "Take one for the team." And I was at the convention, and I had not got any sketches yet, and somebody goes, you know, just ask Rags; he'll probably just do one for you. You know, you're a wizard guy, and a lot of guys would be like, you work for Wizard, we'll give you a free sketch, and it was. I didn't really understand the etiquette anyway. That it was just weird to ask somebody for a free sketch.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I can do something for you. Like I'm from Wizard. We write about you. How about a little something for Daddy? How about a little taste? A little taste. And so Rags draws me this Blue Beetle and comes back and he goes, here it is. It's $80. I don't have $10 to my name. Like I have to find an ATM. I am busted. Like that was a lot of money to me then. And I told my friend, I'm like, he charged me $80. He's like, uh-oh. Like that happens sometimes. I'm like, I can't afford this. Yeah, that was a scary moment. But I remember just sweating, handing him this money and being like, here's all the money I have. And he's like, thanks, man.
Oh man.
I've been crying. Like this is terrible.
Yeah, it's been incredible. We will have to have you back on if you'd be down, because
of course, this is fun.
Oh my gosh, how like that was insanely entertaining.
I'll find Margot.
Yeah, find the Margot Kidder headshot. Yeah.
Jesus. Insane.
For the kids at home, Margot Kidder was Lois Lane
in the original Superman.
Scream well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she was wonderful. All right. Well, hey, thanks for having me on. For real, I know it's just me blabbering on about.
No, that's why we had you on.
That's what the show is.
Right. I can never understand who would want to. This was really an excuse to hang out with Gary. I haven't seen Gary in a long time.
I can't believe you brought up A Slave of Two Masters, and I can't believe I remembered the name.
Yeah, and Disney changed the name of changed the name of that article.
Right, they had to. Yeah, there's actually a disclaimer in front of it now saying like, look, this was a relic of the time. It's
called it's now called a spaceship with two captains.
I love this. That also gives people research to look up. So we're all going to have to hunt down this article by Gary. Yeah, this expose.
It's got.
I'm so glad all my shit, all my blogs, all that wizard stuff, all that blog stuff, it's gone, and I can't tell you how good it feels just to be like.
Oh, I had a website. I had a tripod website in college.
Oh, I remember Tripod.
And I scrubbed that off. That's another thing where it's like, I'm so glad it's not findable.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah, I wrote it in college. It was a different time. Like it's
a different time.
Different time. It's like 25 years ago, man. Give me a break.
Yeah.
This is just a good reminder. If you haven't nuked all your tweets yet, just nuke all your tweets about once every 2 months.
Yeah. I will say, like, our audience definitely must have enjoyed this because we're a bunch of comic geeks, and Wizard is a huge part of that history of comics. Like, and I think anybody who was around in comics around that time, it's inevitably going to be in the history of comics, and that's cool that you were a part of that. And also, just crazy, interesting stories. All right, we have to wrap,
guys.
So. Yes.
See you later. Here we go.
Going back out there. Yeah.
Going back into the real world. No, it's 1 a.m. here, so I'm probably gonna hit the hay.
Awesome. Well, Chris, thank you for coming on. We have a link to.
I don't have anything to plug, so I'm on Twitter as World of Ward.
Awesome.
Not the best handle.
Well, and the Gareb Shamus album is findable if you Google it.
The Gareb Shamus, that was the main thing. Like if you Google my name and his name, that comes up, and that to me is like a little like we're intertwined, baby. Like I won't be ignored. That was the vibe. I won't be ignored, Gareb.
And I will say, Gary linked me to that, and I listened to it, and it's very well produced.
And this is how little I knew about. I put out that I was doing this album, and then all the proceeds were going to the Comic Book Hero Fund or whatever. And Jim McLaughlin was ahead of that at the time, and he emailed me and said, "You absolutely have to take this down right now." Like it was in the track. At the end of the track, I go, "This money is for the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund," and a fake audience goes, "Yeah!" And then right the night before I leave, now it's edited, so it is, and all money is going to charity. Because he put I didn't understand PR at the time.
That they wouldn't appreciate that. Right?
I just stamped their logo on it, and I'm like, they're gonna get us money. Can't do that. You just can't do shit.
Right.
Can't make jokes anymore.
Everyone's so sensitive.
Whew. All right.
What was your
All
Twitter
right.
handle?
World of
Or
War.
World of Ward.
At Arab Shame.
You're Seamus.
No,
and I will.
It's World of Ward. It used to be My website was World of Ward Crap. Get it? Warcraft. Word crap.
Right.
But that's long gone. And then I got a real job, so I didn't want the word crap in my handle, so it became World of Ward. Great story, bro. I know. Want to end on a really big one. Just take them out. Hey,
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
everybody.
Thank you.
We did it.
Yeah.
We did it.
All right, I love it, Gary. Where can everybody get DVSM? Right now they can't.
I'm sold
but
out
where
right
should they
now,
be?
so do me a favor and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Gary Hodges, or follow my Instagram, Dinosaurs versus Marsbots.
Love it. Awesome. And then Corey, I cannot believe you survived this. Where can
kudos.
everybody find your stuff?
He's good at surviving stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I don't know if you can call it I did today surviving. I laughed way too much for somebody with 7 broken ribs.
That's
For
true.
one.
We probably just worsened your injuries.
Notice at the end I kept blacking out my screen.
I know. I kept
Oh.
worrying you were gone for good.
You killed Corey.
No, it's just CoreyKerr.com. And
I love it.
I'm on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and whatever else. So you can go see the weird animations I make for people.
I love it. And then Scott, where can everybody find your stuff and where can they catch you at a signing?
You can catch my stuff at circworks.com. I'm also Circworks on YouTube. If you happen to be in Arizona, if you want to come out to Surprise Arizona this Saturday, I've got this variant cover I did for Image Comics, Ice Cream Man. It's a little parody on the Candyland board game that I did, and I'm doing remarks right here or whatever else. Bunch of stuff over there, plus my own books and signing stuff, doing sketches, all that stuff.
Do you guys know Ryan Dunleavy?
The name sounds familiar.
I didn't know if he ran in your circles. He did a lot of the cartoon stuff for Wizard. He did like the board games. Remember the board games in Wizard? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He's a great guy. He was a freelancer, and he'd be fun to talk to sometime, I'm sure.
Cool. Maybe we'll have to reach out. Yeah, everybody in the chats is just commenting. They really enjoyed this. Also, they seem to be really into the idea of the investigative Gary reporting, which is great. Thanks to everybody who showed up in the chats. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks so
Chris.
much, Chris. Thanks. The one thing I did not expect to come up tonight, but okay.
I love it. I love it so much. It's part of your endearing.
The newsletter too. We got to talk real quick.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Scott, where can everybody?
So we do this Artcaster show. We do this every single week, but it bounces back and forth between Josh's channel and my channel. And we may have to talk, since Corey's regular, maybe we talk about him hosting. I don't know. We haven't brought that up yet. But in any case, you don't know where the show is going to show up. But the best way to know where it's going to show up, to know who the guest is going to be, what the topic is going to be, all that stuff, because YouTube doesn't always let you guys know. The best way to do that is to join our mailing list. We don't spam you or anything like that. Usually, about 30 minutes before it go live, we send out an email with the link and all that stuff. So get on that mailing list if you want to be informed when the show is going live and everything. So, yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thanks to everybody who showed up, and you're on my channel. So if you haven't yet, hit subscribe, hit the bell, all that fun stuff. Gary, Chris, awesome episode, and we'll see everybody next week.
I wanted to point out that Corey's turned purple like
he's
a New York couple.
Yeah.
That's true.
I went to this guy's chocolate factory this morning. And,
have you been going door to door selling meat?
yeah, that's what it was. I found this
You
golden
look kind of
ticket.
like got a Thanos vibe going there.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, I
You
don't
just
have the.
snap the show close. That would be.
Try it out.
If I could move my right hand right now, I could snap, but I can't even pretend to do it with my left hand. I'm not that coordinated.
All right. I need someone to snap.
1, 2.